Well, thanks everyone for joining tonight. Another Thursday, dark October evening. Awesome. We have a guest this evening, so we're going to flip our agenda and let Brian, our guest speaker, go up first so he can bail out afterwards and go look at the aurora with his family.
Or try to at least.
Try to anyway. Aurora's right out there. Or it's right out, right out there. Look north, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Brian, KB2S is president of the Lake Washington Ham Club and a prolific DX'er and knowledgeable radio guy. And he's going to come hang out with us for a little bit tonight. Brian, it's all you.
Okay. Well, let me this here. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity to present. Hopefully there's something for everybody here tonight. And I do not have the Zoom up to where I can see the the chat. Hold on, just one moment. Close this door. So if anybody has any questions or anything as we go along, just feel free to pause me. Otherwise, I will keep going, but you won't throw me off. Yeah, so with Lake Washington, with microhams and do some DXing, do like a lot of digital stuff, remote operation. So what I was going to show you tonight, I've shown one time before. This is the second iteration of it, but it just kind of a walkthrough of the station evolution, kind of, you know, how things got introduced to the station, kind of show you a couple of pieces of the equipment. Um, and and so you may have one of these pieces of equipment and have something to offer about it, which is fine. Or you may be interested in it and you might have a question, which is fine. Uh, Anything is good. And yes, I have a few opinions in here, but any antenna is better than no antenna, and any rig is better than no rig. So it's all really intended to be tongue in cheek. So as long as you don't own a Kenwood, we can be friends. No, I'm kidding. No opinion on
I can
Kenwood.
go in the other room if you want
So
to.
anyway, so let's get going. So again, the point of this is to just show a bunch of different equipment, give you some ideas, some different directions, maybe inspire you in what you might pursue, in a particular path. I know that Ed has definitely inspired me to do some more try and get a little bit more active on VHF and others. So hopefully something here will pique your interest and or maybe spark a thought. Um, and like I said, thank you for the opportunity. Lake Washington would love to see you as well. And so feel free to stop on by, say hello. We have a meeting tomorrow, sorry, not tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, and then a meetup in Bothell the following Saturday. So if something here piques your interest, I should be at both places, like a piece of equipment or something. And if I have it, then I can bring it. I'd be happy to share it with you there. All the stuff's on the website. So don't be a stranger. I'm in it to make friends.
I hear you have an amazing speaker lined up for Saturday morning.
We had to compromise. So
Yeah,
yes, it's your very own Ed there that's going to be speaking on Saturday. And honestly, he does a better job at this than I do. So in the beginning, we had the Baofeng Big Bang, got my license. Now I grew up with a ham shack in the basement. Both my parents were ham radio operators in the 80s. I didn't get licensed until 2019, which pretty much means that anything that was operating on HF, I thought the antenna was broken for a long time because I think the SFI was at like 5 at that particular point in time. And so that was not the best point in time to get involved on HF, but it was a great time to go get a handheld. So, your very typical handheld, get started with it. And it worked, it didn't work, it got lost. Oh well, don't care. Hey, I found it again, oh, it got lost again. These things are like cheap sunglasses, the expensive HT, you look at it wrong and it breaks, but this thing you can run over it with a truck. You can try and lose it, and somebody will, did you drop this? But the other advantage to this is I had it in my luggage, and it was so small that I could hold it up to the window of an aircraft leaving JFK Airport in New York. And we had a gentleman on our repeater the day before out here and who lived right at the end of the runway and had a CW beacon right at the end of the runway. And so we ran a little experiment. So this little Baofeng could hear his CW beacon for, I believe it was 204 miles away before basically we calculated at the position that I was at and the altitude. It should have gotten to about 207, 208. And the only thing that we could find that would have blocked the line of sight from that point was literally the Statue of Liberty. Probably wasn't the problem, but it was the only thing in the way, which is kind of cool. From there, over to your Anytone. Getting a DMR handset. My first job out of college was working on cellular infrastructure. And so I immediately recognized this as old TDMA equipment. Interesting concept. Fun. They're fun. They're fun to use. And it definitely allowed me to do more than I could do with the little Baofeng. Still have that particular HT, and that's the one I use most of the time. From there, started building out the QTH. And the first one was this 857D. These are pretty good little radios. If you can find one, I would recommend it. The only thing that is kind of a bummer on them is that it doesn't have a USB port on it, which is in the end of the world if you're not doing any digital. And the menus are a little less intuitive than they could be, but they're not too bad. On this model, there's not so many things on it that it's really a problem, and it works really well. So you have HF, you have VHF, UHF, everything in a box, pretty small, 100 watts, works great. And that was paired up with one of these little LDG Z11 Pro 2s, which I still use. The fun thing about this one, if you're doing POTA or SOTA and you have end-fed antenna or something that isn't quite always tuned up the way you would like, and it's close but not exactly. These come with a tray inside of them for 8 AA batteries, and they're latching relays. So the one thing that they don't have, but is very easy to add, is and there's of course the backs of everything, right? Like we like to see the backs of everything. Is on the back of this guy, there's room right here for a switch, and it'll take you just a few minutes to add it. Um, so I've added a switch back here that I flip one way if I want to run it on batteries. I flip it the other way if I want to run it on DC. So that way, if I have it in a box, like I carry it around in a like a padded box with some other equipment, if the buttons on the front get depressed, it doesn't do anything. And it's not running the batteries down or anything like that. So that's the only thing that I would say on this thing that is missing is just, if you do get one, they work well. Throw a little switch on there and then you can load it up with batteries and it works great. This is also where I made an error and ran this at the wrong rating. Didn't kill it, but this was where I learned about having to derate your equipment for digital, and the importance of paying attention to whether the power level was sideband and average power, or if you're running digital, you're running full envelope, full duty cycle. You can't run as much power. So I got lucky on this one, but I know last time I gave this presentation. There were a couple guys that didn't realize that and fixed that because they did do a lot of digital. This was also when I started using dodgy antennas. This particular antenna, uh, if you zoom right in here, you'll see it says 200 watts for that single sideband, but 25 watts for CW, which I don't know why it's that low for CW, but that's what it is. And I did not pay attention to that. And that is where I got my first RF burn. So, was sending CW and something kept biting my thumb. And it was RF coming back into the shack from that little unknown. So that thing got decommissioned pretty quickly after that. As far as like getting an RF burn, um, if you've never gotten one or you don't know how they work, if you grab AC power, you're going to notice it immediately. If you get up into higher frequencies, your nerves don't react to it. You won't feel it. You can hold on to something that has a considerable amount of power in it at a higher frequency, and your muscles won't tighten up or anything like that. You may not even feel it, but it's cooking you. So that's a problem. And there is no skin effect for your skin. So it's going through you. It's not going, around the edges. So be careful. Um, you know, Moving on to other antennas, started working with off-center fed antennas, started to learn, the pros and cons of that. Yep, you get all the bands, but you get weird patterns. And started experimenting with doublets. Pretty much anything that I could get a wire into a tree, I had it. And started doing a lot of antenna modeling at this point in time because when all you have is a wire and a bunch of stubbornness, which is pretty much what I had, um, you're really motivated to learn how to improve your setup. And so this started me pretty much, I think, on a great path with some of these humble antennas, learning a lot about antennas, both wire and beams and everything. So if you have wire antennas, that's great. I really would encourage you to get started with some modeling software. You can get MMANA is pretty easy to get started with and start playing around, see what you can do. The one thing is, if something doesn't work or something works great, um, you won't know. You're going to have to test it for like a month or so to really know. And I see, probably most of you already know this, but this was also where I learned that all claims online of antennas that can, you be heard clearly in Europe are probably being used by somebody in Europe or somebody in Maine or somebody, closer to that amazing spot that, seems improbable from here. Uh, that was pretty frustrating is realizing, man, everybody that says anything about how great their antenna is, like the first question anymore, for a while was, what grid are you in? And if it was started with letter F or higher, then I was like, forget it. I don't want to hear about it. Probably not going to do the same thing for me under the same circumstances. So from there, over to ICOM, the venerable 7300, great piece of gear. Probably the best thing about this is there's a million resources for it. So when we talk about newer hams and what we might recommend for them, of course, there's many great recommendations. This isn't the only one. But one of the things that's really nice is that there's a YouTube video for it or a web page or a document or something. So if you've got newer hams or you're a newer ham and you don't want to rely on others for tech support, this is pretty good choice. And then we get the nice USB port. So the rig blaster, the little connectors and all that stuff, didn't have to use that anymore. This is also when, I started to get brave and or stupid, and picked up an amp. So yeah. Somebody have a question? Oh, okay, cool. I thought I heard something. Tube amp. Tube amp was, I think that this was a really good way to go for a beginning amp. Um, you can find them. They're super forgiving. And I found it to be a great first amp for me, because as long as you didn't just like totally abuse it, you could abuse it, and it wouldn't die on you. Doesn't have all the protections, but then that means that you actually have to learn why those protections are there and think about how your setup is set up. And one of the things that I learned with this is, because my breaker panel is exactly the furthest apart, as far away from where this thing was plugged in as possible, and it was running on 120 volts. Yeah, the lights would dim. When I keyed down, it would, you'd see the lights dim a little bit. And, we called an electrician out to see if we could improve that, and, what it would take. And that's when I learned you burn your neutrals out. So, uh, yeah, don't do that. And that's also where I learned that it takes a while for a breaker to pop. So you could be running a lot more amperage than you think you are for the breaker, um, and it might not pop immediately. So they're not designed really for, a 15 amp circuit can go to 20 amps, 25 amps, 30 amps, and stay there for a bit. They're really designed for infinite amps, short circuits, things like that. So you can really stress things out, and where you will have problems is where the neutrals tie together in the wall or around a switch. Uh, I also moved up to more tubes because, this is the derating. I was doing a lot of digital, and wanted to be a little easier on the tubes. And the one that I picked up, some lovely human being had put little markers on it, so that these load and plate numbers, had 20, 40, whatever the band was. So I could go between bands pretty fast. You put the little markers on there, and 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I mean, not very long. Um, and if you ever get one of these and you want to do this, you want the 10-meter modification, you got to open it up, don't kill yourself, and cut one green wire. There, I saved you $70. Uh, when you get into these, yeah, the inside, very, very, more tubes, more power, and more things to learn. I mean, learning about ALC, learning about how relays work, looking at all the input tuning, like what do those do, and figuring all of that out, learning what a chicken stick is so that you don't blow your hand off, and also learning that you need to get a bigger tuner, which went to this guy. So, AT600, it's a good tuner, it's loud. So as you go up these series on the LDG tuners, the relays get louder and louder. The small ones aren't too bad. This one, you can hear anywhere in the downstairs, no problem. If you go one more up from this, you can hear it anywhere in the house, no problem, when those relays are searching for a solution. If they have it locked in, it's just a thunk. But if it ever retunes, you're gonna know it. And the other nice thing about this is you get another antenna port, which means now I can run two crappy antennas in the backyard, which is a lot of fun. So I have one that I think works, and then one that I think probably works that doesn't. And you can play around, which was, like I said, a lot of fun. Enabled a lot more experimentation, and you can do it in real time. Getting meters, getting your protection in, learning how that works, seeing how the analog meters differed from the digital meters, being able to see the SWR, to in just without I mean, you could see it on the radio too, but being able to see the SWR and the reflected power and all of that on another, display. Having an alarm was nice because you could run things in a bad state like I was doing earlier and not know it because nothing's screaming at you. But if you have an alarm, it'll scream at you so you don't get dinged. But this is where all of that lovely, lovely RG8X that I bought pre-made from Vetco started to die. Didn't work too well. And so, off to go figure out some better cabling. And at this point in time, LMR 240 looked pretty good. So all of the jumpers and things got changed out for LMR 240. I thought there were two 8X jumpers that were still sneaking around for several more years that I did not know were there. But having to make trade-offs around attenuation and thinking about what power you're putting into it and what the loss will be and how much you're spending on it was a good exercise. And it really helped me help other folks. All of this knowledge that I could then pass on. This is also when I stopped getting out of DIY antennas quite as much. Still use them, but switched over to a DX Commander because I live in a suburban lot, and that worked really well. I've used that for many years. That has worked very well for me. Um, this is again where antenna modeling comes in. I could not find Europe. I had no idea why I could not find Europe. And as I found out, I was using a Mercator map, which is pretty dumb, instead of a good map, a great circle map. So like all my ideas of headings and things are all completely wrong. But that's the way you learn. And coming in here and you know, doing the research and everything, you find out about takeoff angles, which is pretty cool. More on that. Okay. From there, I went back to the dark side. I'm sorry, I'm an ICOM guy, guys. And got a 991A. Oh my gosh, the menus on this thing. You might work great for you, might have no problems. This rig, at least for newer hams, I've observed two problems with this rig occur. One is the menus can be a little overwhelming. They're nice if you know what you're doing and you really want to dial something in, but if you don't know what you're doing, there's not nearly as many tutorials, and some of them are kind of confusing. The other thing on this is they have a manufacturing problem. On some of the units, there's lacquer on one of the boards that covers up one of the ground connectors. And the behavior that you'll observe is on 40 meters, you'll be using the rig, and all of a sudden the SWR will just go crazy, just off the charts. And if you have somebody who's brave, they can get in there, check for that lacquer and just, clean it off and you're good. If you get somebody that's nervous, or if you're nervous getting into it, then off to the manufacturer it goes, and it takes them about a month to send it back to you, which is kind of a bummer. Still use the rig, but it's not my daily driver. It's the one that's out in the garage. One other thing on this particular rig is if you're using like Vara or anything like that, you might want to double check me, but the last time I looked at this one, if I remember correctly, it was either this one or the 857, but I think it was this one. There's a limitation on there's a filter that could limit your speed. So check for that. If you're doing, like I said, like Vara or Pactor, things like that, just make sure that you do a little bit of research on this one because there is a bit of a limitation around that. From there, big upgrade. I'm lucky. I do have the resources to get something like this. They're not cheap. But if you added up how much I spent on all the rigs to the left, you'd see that was actually much more than this. These are great rigs. And if you know somebody or if you have one, these are really good rigs, honestly, for newer hams, uh, in a way, um, because you can do two things at once. You have two receivers, so you can put both receivers exactly on the same frequency on two different antennas and listen and see, what's the difference. You can put them on the exact same frequency and play around with one that has the ALC set this way and the other one has it set that way, or the gain or whatever. And you can observe the effect that all the pre-selectors have, all the DSP, all of the stuff on the rig. You can real time see what it's doing because you essentially have two radios in one, and that really facilitated a lot of learning. This was the rig that I had during COVID, and it is built for remote. It has an actual, there's other rigs, I think 7610 has one as well. I know there's more now, and they were around then too. But it has an Ethernet jack in it, which and it is built to be remoted. It also has, like I said, two antenna ports for transmitting and receiving, but you also get a receive only, and you get another one for a transverter. You don't need the transverter, it'll still act as a receiver. So you can run four antennas, two listening, two transmitting off of this rig and just change them from remote, which is pretty nice. If you have a hard time seeing, you can throw a HDMI monitor on this, which is nice. I wouldn't personally, I don't use the front of this all that much. If knobs and buttons are important to you, go for it. If you don't really care, you can save some money and get one that just has a flat front panel on it. But this thing has been really, really helpful. Has all, a bunch of things broken out in terms of like you can control other stuff, and you have software, that you can run on your computer that runs, the rig completely. You can have, like I said, you can be on different bands at the same time. You can also run this from an iPad, iPhone, a Mac, which I've done. Software works pretty well. And while I was stuck for COVID, I sat in this room for about 2 years at work, and my rig was right here. It's right here right now. It's always on the screen. So if I'm working, I have work over here and I have my radio right there. And that very much facilitated me making a lot of the goals that I had in radio around getting DXCC on a number of bands, or getting a bunch of band slots, or catching Ed on 6 meters every time he was there, or 10 meters every time he was there, like literally every time he was there. Because it was like right here. So all day long, if something interesting popped up, boom, I could do it. And that is a really killer feature. This isn't the only way you can do it, but man, is it nice. Uh, because I had a remotable rig, uh, this guy, not so much. So for Christmas, and see what we can get for Christmas. A nice Elecraft KPA 500 works great. You can hook it up to a Raspberry Pi or whatnot. It has serial controls for all the stuff on it. It's really easy to use. And it works really well. A lot, good protections, good duty cycle. The one thing though that it does have is this is a 24-volt fan, and it's loud. It has, if I remember correctly, 5 settings, and anything over like 3 is pretty loud, and 5 is like jet engine. And again, I do a lot of digital, so if you're doing digital, you're probably going to be 3, 4, 5, not infrequently, and it's loud. So that limited things a little bit because it would disturb people, anywhere in the house you'd hear it. If I were to do it again, I would just go get this tuner. If you're going to get a tuner and you're not going to get like a super beefy Pal Star or something like that, I would go get this tuner. This is the one I would just get it and be done with it. Because it will go up to, I think, 1,000 watts as long as your SWR is reasonable. And if you're running 5 to 1, 6 to 1, why are you, what are you doing running legal limit anyway? Most of the power is coming right back at you anyhow. So you should probably fix that. But it'll run, I think up to 10 to 1, up to like 500 watts or something like that. But it'll run higher with a reasonable SWR. The other thing I really appreciated about this is more antenna ports. So now I could have this hanging off of one of the ports on the flex. So now I have 3 more ports there. So now I have 4 transmitter ports and 2 more receiver ports. And I, at various points in time, have used all of them. I might have a transmitter, uh, you know, um, I might have a dipole for one band that's like 10 meters or something like that, where didn't need to get it super high. And then I might have another one like the DX Commander from, 40 to 15 or 10 or whatever. I did manage to get a wire up in the tree for 80 meters, but then I would have like a log, a loop on ground. That has worked really well. If you have a lot of noise, loop on ground antenna works pretty well. Can't transmit into it, and sometimes the directionality isn't exactly what you want, but you can just quickly click, 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 and you can switch those antennas around, and it's very easy, and you don't have to get a lot of expensive automation equipment. Um, didn't really need this, but I got it anyway. I didn't realize I needed it quite when I got it. Zellicraft watt meter. It works okay. It depends on which frequency range you get. You get these nice remotable um, SWR bridges. If you automate your system, I'll show you a trick here in a minute on this. That will make that thing quite a bit more accurate. Node red. So if you ever want me back, I'll show you Node red. Uh, you can start doing customization. So you can customize, you can automate things. I might be tired, I might not be paying attention. I might want to have, some protections in here, make sure that the tuner's in the right antenna, or make sure that, things are all set up. Easy to do, pretty easy to set up. Like I said, if you ever want that, I'll come back for that. And you can make the thing do stuff that it was never designed to do. Now, remember I told you that the fan was really, really loud as it went up? Well, if you automate it, then you can keep track of what the temperature is of the amp, and then you can ramp the fan up and down as you need. Or you can put a timer on this that says, look, you haven't transmitted anything for 10, 15 minutes. I'm just going to turn the amp off. So that way you don't forget it and you come back, you forget it on Friday, you come back on Monday, and it's just been sitting there on standby all weekend, doing nothing. Very, very nice. This calibrated SWR curve. Now, if it doesn't have to be this particular unit, it could be anything, but with this particular watt meter, they vary a little bit. The components vary a little bit. They vary, depending on what your feed lines and everything are. You'll get a little bit of variance here and there, and that drove me nuts. But what you can do is you can hook this all up, you can get it all hooked up, put it onto a dummy load, and then you can use the most accurate meter that you have. The one in the Flex is fairly good. It's not a bird, but it's fairly good. And you can take measurements. So for each frequency range, you can, transmit at 10 watts, 20 watts, 30 watts, 40 watts, whatever. And you get this curve. And you do it into a dummy load. And it's not going to be linear. But you can go into your station automation, and you can use math, and you can straighten out that curve. So any non-linearities that you have in your system, you can get rid of them with math and adjust for them. And so now you're slightly, off. SWR bridge is like bang on. And this is essentially what you do with any of the high-end equipment, you get better components that have less non-linearities in them. But eventually you have to basically do this, where you have to take measurements and you have to make adjustments. So, and this is free. Um, Telepost, their station monitors are great. Um, you can get right in the same range of accuracy as their equipment with this technique. The other thing that you can do is you can use this to automate your SWR curves. So very, very easy. I think Rig Control actually has a command for this. If you ever use that for HamLib, where you can go and uh, say, okay, I'm going to go on 10 meters and I'm going to start at the bottom of the band and I'm going to go up every so often. I'm going to transmit dot, 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 and I'm going to graph that out and I'm going to get a curve for my antenna, save that curve. 3 months from now, something's a little weird. Go run the thing again. You get another curve. You don't have to break down your system. You don't have to go dig out the nano VNA or anything like that because you can build your own reference curves. If you've got a Yagi or something up in the air, you can use this data center automation to do anything you want. So, that's a feature that you would have to pay for on some of the station monitors, and you don't have to pay anything for it. You can just do it on your own. The other thing that's nice is you can get some gauges on here quite frequently that you wouldn't otherwise have. And that was really helpful to understand the voltage drop that was coming from the panel to see how hard it was hitting it, and pretty handy. This is also where, sorry, I got a little better with my antenna foo, you know, understanding angles, takeoff angles, and being able to um, visualize. If I looked north, if I put my fingers out kind of at the edge of my field of vision and hold them out a certain, like right up here by my field of vision, and I look north, this is how far up off the horizon these places are. So if you're thinking about an antenna, all that time that it was used modeling antennas and thinking through and all of this, you kind of get to a point where you can literally just like look in a direction and kind of figure out from our grid where things are at, and what your antenna would have to do to get to a particular place, or why it's really hard. Madagascar is really hard because my neighbor's house is right there. So if I want to get something in that direction, I need to use an antenna that's like not right behind my neighbor's house, things like that. And I also could, because I had so many of these ports, I could try all kinds of different antennas just back to back. And so I didn't have the problem of using one for a month and then switching it out and using a different one. And then you never know, is it the sun? Is it you? What is it? Um, and that really, again, um, it really accelerated my ability to learn the differences between all of, the way these things behaved. And that, again, is why if I had to do it all over again, this is the tuner I'd get. Because these little ports on the back, these are teachers. These will help you learn. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a moment and just check in, make sure nobody has any questions. Otherwise, I'll pick back up. All right. Let's keep going. Next thing. That wonderful Elecraft amp. Well, it broke.
No.
Oh, no.
It broke. Right. So the disclaimer here, the message of this presentation is to have courage. I'm a lucky idiot, but lucky idiots are still idiots. Be careful. Know the difference between courage and stupidity. Yeah. So we ended up, go over to the amp. And what is this? This 270 volt air. What is that? That is not good. What is going on here? The Bouvet Island expedition is in 2 weeks. It was literally. And and so I'm like, what is this, right? The manual tells you basically nothing, and so that's no good. Um, so I go to the internet and literally, how to fix the KPA 500 270 volt error says you've reached the end of the internet, which is not great. So I called California and literally they were flooding. Wilsonville was flooding. There you go. That's Wilsonville at that particular moment. They are not able to help me. But they did pick up the phone and I got to talk to the guy who designed the amp and he was really nice. So, what are we doing? We're going in. We're going in. We're going to go in and screw around with a $2,700 piece of equipment and hopefully I don't kill it. I have at that point in time 12 hours of electrical engineering. So that makes me a mechanical engineer. And okay, here's the diagram. Well, that's great. Not sure what all of that has to say. So, a little bit of an adventure there to figure out what this means. And you know, your mileage may vary, and I work on this stuff, so I kind of know, what to look for. You can feed these diagrams into programs like Copilot or ChatGPT, and they'll tell you what they do. So you can go in and you can ask it, what does C15 do? What do these things do? This is stepping up the voltage is what this is doing, dude. And you can at least understand or confirm if you're like, I think that's where the problem is. You can confirm that, are you completely off your rocker or not? Caveat, you know, they could be wrong. People can be wrong too. So, uh, you know, that was the way I did it. Um, guess where this little resistor is that's dead? Yep, worst possible place. And here it is. Here is said resistor R16. And the nice thing is there's 3,000 different versions of this little guy, which is, fun. Like, which one is it? Because I had no idea what I was doing at the time. And so out comes out the micrometer. And yeah, it is an 805 as it turns out, which is the one there in the middle. Thank you for, bifocals and uh, probably a telescope or something like that took a while to figure out. Um, okay, well, it's which one? What's the tolerance, right? Why is it even there? What is it doing? Again, you learn. You learn what that thing does, and you learn like why does it do it? And YouTube's your friend, Electro Boom. This guy is, kind of funny if you ever see him. And he explains how this works. Great, now I know how it works. And I can reverse engineer to figure out what the heck is, going on. And eventually, figure out like, oh, it says it's 60 volts. Well, shoot, it's off this 60-volt tap. Um, continue to reverse engineer. Go get a 1 watt resistor instead of half a watt resistor so that this thing doesn't happen again. Did confirm that it was not designed to be a fuse. And now you got to go get that thing off. So, that's like trying to blow up the Death Star. That was loads of fun. Reassemble, test, uh, turned it on, got Sri Lanka right away, which was kind of fun. And I'm happy to report that I was lucky enough to be one of the 18,000 people that did make a QSO with Bouvet Island before they had to do their thing. So there you go. Lots of fun. 705. This is a great little rig, especially like Soda Poda. This thing works really, really well, and would definitely recommend it. I tried to use it for a number of things. One thing that I would really recommend after trying a bunch of stuff is if you're serious and you're going to go like camping or things like that, you can get this amp Juma 100p. It's not too bad, and it'll run around 100 watts or so, and the fan never kicks on. I've never heard the fan kick on this thing. This is a super, super, super solid piece of equipment. This thing is great. Can't recommend it enough. Uh, Wonderful piece of equipment. Even if you're just doing it in your house, your QTH, that is a good amp. Um, that is about the size of the amp right there. So it's not real big, and makes it a lot easier to carry around. I carry this around. This was the setup that I used when I had the opportunity to travel to Iceland and operated there for a little while. That was fun and wonderful amp. My current project with this thing is it takes about 200 watts to run, and the highest power level that you can get out of a USB-C connector is 240 watts. Um, I'm one of these days I'm gonna get this thing to run off of USB-C so I can get rid of batteries and good stuff like that. Another fun thing with this is satellite. Now, there's a bug in the 705 firmware. You So for this satellite Green Cube, wonderful, wonderful satellite. I'll talk about it a little bit more. Covers a huge area. It's UHF only. Really good satellite, and you have to correct for Doppler as it's moving, right? When you transmit it, um, if your software, which most software does, will continue to move the VFO on the receive. And if you're transmitting, it shifts the transmit up as well. So I use this so many times. I did successfully make a QSO with Whiskey 7 Yankee Echo Delta here in CN87 from Hawaii, which is a hard place to get with satellite. It's harder now because for reasons I'll get into, but did get to do it. But I did it when it was straight overhead, and I didn't understand why. Well, when it's straight overhead, there's basically no Doppler correction. Um, and yeah, things you'll discover, magnetic declination, and you'll find experienced hams that, like again, somebody that I know that has a really nice satellite setup. They weren't sure if they had ever adjusted for this when they put up their tower, all of their equipment. Turns out they hadn't. So for like 4 or 5 years, their whole very nice setup was off by 15 degrees. Um, and if you ever do satellite or anything like that, which I highly recommend that you do, this operating position was literally 20 feet away from a bar. So there's about 50, 60 people sitting right behind me getting drunk. And I'm here waving this thing around, and it's about 5'8", and they don't care. They don't care. I'm sitting there thinking, like, why is this guy? They're probably thinking, why is this guy waving a rake at the sky for an hour? And nobody cares. In fact, the only time that I ever had anybody bother me was at this particular location right here, which is the back end of an apartment complex at 2 a.m. And there's a couple cars off to the side, and this guy comes out and he's watching me, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. There's nobody else around, it's just me and him. He's not saying a word. I'm trying to be friendly, not saying a word. And I finally realized, oh, I said the magic words, I'm not going to mess with your car. And then he went away. So that's apparently the only thing that anybody ever cared about. But yeah, you can have a lot of fun, making contacts. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So I had so much fun, in fact, that I managed to go get an IC set 9700, which is great, great rig. Um, and then I got finally got a rotor for it. Awesome, for my birthday. And then this happened in May.
Yeah.
And this happened in May. and the satellite Green Cube died. So it is gone, is dead now. So that was kind of a bummer. It was around for a couple years, but it's probably dead now. Hopefully they'll put another one up, but it was really nice because it was up at about, I think, 4,800 kilometers up. It was up pretty far. Who knows? Maybe it'll come back. I don't know, but that was a bummer. You also find things like this. Why do we have 8-pin DIN connectors in 2024? I don't know. Not much fun, but that's another little project. Can I make that any better? Got sick and tired of the fans on the KPA, so went and found the SP 1.3, which has 8 fans on it. This thing is really quiet. And so, more quieter power was pretty cool. If you operate remote or mobile, I don't remember, Ed, if you have an amp or not. This thing's really quiet, and it's about the same size as a KPA 500. So,
I run the KPA 500.
yeah. If you ever want to hear it, I'll record it or whatnot, but it is considerably
I
quieter.
believe you.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I wear not to interrupt you, but when I'm sitting in the tent operating hard, I wear my Bose noise canceling headphones because the amp is so loud.
One of these days, yeah, you should come over and try and operate with this, or I'll record it for you or
Awesome.
whatnot if you're ever around. Way better. And you can replace these all out for Noctua fans, which are like basically whisper quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, lot quieter. And it has set up for 2 radios. So you can say radio 1, radio 2. You can have 2 different antenna setups for all of these. It has a tuner already built into it. Um, it has an SO2R for listening, and it has 2 inputs for radios, which is nice.
And
And then the 4 jacks on the out.
the
Uh,
1.3, Brian, that's 1.3 kW out. Is that
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a 1.5, but you're kind of at that like why.
yeah.
So yeah, kind of why. Yeah, works really well. And if you ever want to automate it, I already know how to automate it. So we have all of that. Um, Now, the problem with this, for some reason, even though I would run about 250, 300 watts on the KPA 500 doing digital, I put this on there, ran about 350 to 400. It'll run higher than that. If you get one, be careful about which firmware you load into it because the newer firmwares, they have a hard limit on some of these things for no real reason. So it'll detect digital mode and it'll really derate itself, which it doesn't really need to do generally. It's just a thing that they put in there, and so be careful. But problem was is this thing started melting the wires on the antennas. So a lot of the wire antennas that I have fold backs on them, and it would melt the ends of them together, it fuse. So it'd run for a little while and it'd be fine, and then all of a sudden that band had bad SWR like from then on. And it took me a little while to figure out what was going on with it, and I had to restring the wires, but it was a pain. So, all right, time to get a better antenna. Managed to pick up a stepper big IR for a really good price. Um, Only problem was it was over across. I had to take the ferry to go get it, so we had to load it up on the car. It was in 2 pieces, but you can do it now. You can do it. You can put it in 2 pieces. It totally works. So if you see one and you're like, how am I going to get it around? It's actually pretty easy. And it blends in. So, the only thing you really see is this box, and the rest of this is gone. Your neighbors don't know what it is. They have no idea. And if you're not familiar with this antenna, the thing that's nice about it, it does have a coil down here for 60 and 80. And there's a little bit that you got to know about that. So if you ever do it, feel free to contact me. There's some specific things that you're going to want to do. You're also going to want to go and get the fiberglass support pole for it, which is I think like $50. You can go over to Bellevue, Steppers here in Bellevue. They'll hand it to you, no problem. I mean, they're going to make you pay for it, but they'll hand it to you. Um, so if you're not familiar with this particular antenna really fast, this has a copper beryllium tape in it. And if you took your extra exam and you happen to hit safety questions, beryllium is a no-no. So if you ever have to dig into this thing, I would highly recommend you wear a mask. I don't know that it's specifically a problem, but I don't want to find out in 50 years. Well, I'd be pretty lucky if it was 50 years, 20 years. Um, but that tape is all wound up in here. And so what it does is it puts that tape up to the exact amount of antenna you need for whatever frequency you're on. So you don't really need a tuner anymore because the antenna is like custom length. And for I think 15 and above, it'll do a 3/4 element, which has a nice pattern to it. You can do a 3/4 element if you want. A lot of folks running around here with stepper Yagis, they're great. Big IR. So, that's kind of the end of those days. Push button for the band, it'll track, it'll do all the things. This particular controller is a crazy controller for the price that I paid for it. One thing to note on this, if you ever get it, again, feel free to contact me, is you have to be super, super, super careful about the control cables that go out here. So these little control cables, when this thing is plugged in, it has voltage going out here on those control cables. I think it's doing that to hold the stepper motor. I'm not entirely sure that's why it's doing it, but you have to like unplug it off the wall. If this thing breaks, if you something chews through one of these things, you get snagged, you hit it with a lawnmower, whatever, or on the back of this box, if you disconnect it while it's powered up, you probably just killed your motor controller inside. Depending on the age of the unit, it might be like $7 or $8 if you can find the chip. For this one, this is newer. That's a $60 mistake. So be careful. Other thing with this that trying to chase down some of these problems when you go to more power. Well, look at this wonderful little job over here. This looks really pro, right? So all of this had to get yanked out. This is like terrible. And I've discovered I still had a couple of our RG8X Vetco cables running around in here still, which was, super awesome. So, I came upon a nice reel of RG400 for a low price. And I gotta tell you, it's pretty awesome because you can heat it up to oblivion and you want to make something watertight, you can literally just run the adapter down in this and just fill it full of solder and it won't melt, won't catch on fire, won't do anything. These things are really nice. And for balance and things, you can turn this thing 1 inch coil radius. Awesome, awesome. So this is the one I have for POTA. It's about the size of my hand. Um, and you can get this really nice and tight and get some really, really nice results with it. Really nice looking cables, jumper cables, things. The only problem is it's expensive. So I happen to get a deal on it. If you look around, you can find deals on it. If you don't get a deal on it, it's about $11 a foot. If you do get a deal on it, you can get it for less. But cleaned up the box. Now, 17 meters. 17 meters still doesn't work. 17 meters, if I'm below 100 watts, works fine. I go above 100 watts, my SWR immediately goes nuts. Every single time. I have trudged everything down. I've swept it. I've used dummy loads, everything I can think of to figure out what on earth is going on. Can't figure it out. Can't catch it. Can't seem to find whatever it is, does not show up below 100 watts. So when I redid this, I know we get a little more lightning, but ultimately this is, my grounding solution. So I have these these nice polyphasers here, and they're directional. So this one, down here goes into the shack, up there goes to the antenna, and the polyphaser is oriented to the right. This one is oriented to the left,
Mm.
which means that it's in backwards.
Oh no.
Then backwards.
Oh.
So I need to flip this thing around. It's in backwards, idiot. You won't find that with tools until you realize, like, wait a second, this thing's mirrored. I wonder if this thing is backwards.
Oh.
And yeah, it's backwards. And when you do your control cables coming out to that antenna, you know, you got to think like anything touches shorts, anything here, like I'm fried, right? Um, so you really, really got to think that through, and this was the best that I could come up with there. But much cleaner. Using better cabling, my noise floor did go down enough to notice.
Mm.
And even just replacing out the Belden 9913 or the LMR 400 jumpers inside, which were 6 feet, something like that, I have to turn the power down to get the same power out. So these things make a measure like a measurable difference. We're talking like 30, 40 watts that I have to turn things down with everything else the same. So really nice, really worth it if you can swing it, definitely. Recommend it. All right, we're getting towards the end here. So back to SO2R. So, over a year ago, I got a nice antenna switch. It is still sitting in a box right next to me, and that's how busy I've been. I haven't even had a chance in over a year to open it up, but I'm taking sabbatical, so I'm gonna have time. If you are ever going to do anything where you're going to run multiple radios at the same time, maybe you want to go and get the club something for field day, or maybe you want to do something for field day. But if you ever are in need or think you will want to run two radios at the same time, catch that QR code. There's a presentation on this. These are very, very good filters. These are built off of a design that's been around for a while. There's some changes to it. Um, they'll automatically track. They'll do a bunch of things. Um, you build them yourself. You can find them assembled, but there's kits that used to be sold. And these are extremely good filters, especially for the money. So if you ever see a 5B4 AGN filter, and there's a groups.io group that you can join, and you have any, like, if you're like even 50/50, you're going to want to do SO2R or anything like that, and you can afford it if you have the funds, buy it. If you don't use it, you will be able to sell it. The last bulk buy, like the last bulk buy for parts, was maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. And I hesitated and didn't do it. And I kicked myself in the butt ever since. Um, Once I realized how expensive it would be to get something approaching, like not even as good as this. Um, and I'm happy to report that last week a pair of these came up and I was able to get them. If I don't use them, I will let you guys know. But you're probably going to have to pry them from my cold dead hands because they're extremely, extremely good filters. For field day last year, we had 4 HF rigs going at the same time off of 4 different antennas. They were all within 200, 300 feet of each other. And they were working on harmonics. We were working on like 15, 20, 40, and 80, and using a triplexer and a pair of these. We had people that were running sideband, that were running FT8, and doing CW um, happily, all right next to each other. It's pretty good. If you add a stub to these, they're even better. On some of the bands, you'll get like, I think around, if I remember correctly, 40, 50 dB of isolation. You can get it to like 70, 80 dB of isolation if you pair these up with a stub. And if you can, get a pair so you can put one on the transmitter and one on the receiver. Um, and uh, and man, they kick butt. Um, they kick butt. But for the time being, you you can't get them the way you used to be able to. Last thing, it's one of these guys. I've used them before. Again, maybe the club wants to look into this or not. It's fine. It's a Buddy Hex. I do not work for Buddy Pull. But these things are pretty slick. We use this for field day. I've used one for a couple months here at my house. You get about 8 dB gain off of it's a 2-element Yagi effectively, and about 20 dB front to back, 15 to 20 dB front to back. And I was able to confirm that because on my Flex, I could run the vertical and I could run this at the same time on the same frequency and see exactly what the noise floor was doing between the two,
Mm.
or exactly what the gain was. So it has a crank in it down at the bottom here. The mast comes separately, but it has a little crank down here. You can kind of see it a little bit. And so you want to turn this thing, you just come out and and you've turned it. They're
Bam.
working on an automatic rotor, or like a electrical rotor design for it. There's some guys that are working on this. You can put this up in about 30 minutes.
What do you think that weighs, Brian?
I can get you the exact weight. If I remember correctly, I think the top of the Buddy Hex weighs about 15 pounds.
Okay.
If you the mast is a separate system that you can select the size. I'm getting the 10-meter tall mast because you can put other things on it. I think that weighs 21 pounds if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Um, the seven, if you're not going to use it for other antennas, you're just going to use it for this. Chris, and I would agree with him, recommends the 7-meter mast because it's a little easier to move around. And there's a ham radio crash course YouTube video where they set this all up. You can go check that out. But they work really well. Um, Whiskey 7 Yankee Echo Delta was the guy who first got this, and he has a couple of boys, and he didn't want to have to mess around. Like even with a buddy stick or vertical, by the time I get it out, I tune it, get it all set it up, it's always an hour. It shouldn't be, but it always seems like it's an hour by the time I'm done with it, even at a campsite. And with this, I can verify, yes, you can get this thing all put together in about 30 minutes. Takes a little bit of practice. You won't do it on the first time, but by about the fourth or fifth time, yeah, you've got it. And if you get the 7-meter version of the mast, um, then you don't need a step stool or step ladder or anything like that. You can just reach up and plunk it right onto the top.
Okay.
If you get the 10-meter, then some of these elements are a little harder, but there's a tube that they sell that you can to put these on here. You can run the 7-meter mast all the way up. The 10-meter mast, you have to overlap the end sections by about 2-3 feet. With this on it, if you have something else on it, you might not. And yeah, everything's really intuitive, the guying hardware. The mast itself is not round, it's kind of like a egg shaped. This is probably the closest way I can describe it. So it resists torsion, twisting, it's got it was made by a guy who this is what he does. So it's pretty well put together. And this is in my backyard looking up. So I think this was the 7, no, this was the 10-meter mast. It was up enough to get up over the roof line of a split level, and you could tell. So you knew. And so I'll have one of those for Poda and Soda. So if you ever want to hang out, I got the equipment. And that is it for me. Um, Hopefully you saw something in here, you learned something, you were inspired, maybe you want to come back, you want to like, hey, I want to know more about this, or now I might think about like, how could I do that? Lots and lots of fun stuff in here. Um, and hopefully you got something out.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Anybody have questions for Brian?
Yeah, is your email on that yours?
Yeah,
Or how, is that how you?
yeah, you can. You can find me on there. You can also find me right here. You won't have any problem finding me there. But yeah, it's just it's just me, ME, Mike Echo at KB2S.net. So
So
cool.
Brian, I'm not seeing a Roan tower 40 or 50 feet. Have you thought about that?
Well, I have a pretty small backyard, but yes, I have. I have. I think I'll I told Ed that, I promised him that I was going to show you that I had a pretty ridiculously antenna limited setup. You're like, wow, you got all this stuff, but you got this one antenna. I got all of this stuff set up, and I'll tell you why I probably won't do it is for this reason right here. Because uh, while I was doing all of this, let's see here if I can find this. Yes. All right. Can folks see that okay?
Yeah, we're seeing a Zoom screen.
Oh, you're seeing the Zoom screen. Sorry. Let me do that again.
You had a house.
Yeah, they also help with the LED lights you picked.
There we go.
Yeah, you see that guy? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this is my lovely neighbor, and that's what that does all the time.
And it
I
does
love it.
does WSJT-XD code that or?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can decode this from outer space. Yes, there's no problem with being able to decode this. And yeah, every night from whenever to whenever, even when they're not around, it's going.
Darkness. All right.
So yeah, so that's the real answer is I could put something up. I have thought about it, but I'm just one weekend away from somebody putting up some giant RFI, headache. And
I think a lot of us are in the same boat.
yeah,
Well, at least a couple of us go camping.
yeah.
Camping.
So my idea is to, if I ever manage to find a little chunk of land somewhere quiet, that's probably where I'll set it all up. So,
Nice.
Did we buy the tri-band filters for the beam?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the club
I
body.
couldn't remember if we bought them or not.
Well, one of the club members built a nice little Pelican case with the splitter and then 3 filters for 10, 15, and 20. And who made that? As a Dune Star, I think, was the fellow down in Oregon.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a less fancy filter version, but we were able to, one field day, we were able to run 2 or 3 stations off of an A3S Yagi off the back of my truck here simultaneously on the one antenna. Right now is really nice. But anyway, crazy stuff to explore. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a question about the little amplifier you use for your 705. Does that cover HF, VHF, and UHF?
it does. Yeah, it goes from 160 to 440.
Okay.
There's a IC 905. And I've heard people have various opinions of whether or not they really like that particular rig. I'm not an expert in microwave, but the one thing that is nice about that is even for like 1.2 gig and 440, it has a remote PA. And so it runs Ethernet from the rig out to the antenna. So you don't have to run,
Yeah.
really expensive stuff. Yeah,
Mm.
which is just hard to run and expensive and all of that. So that's pretty nice. I should have my hands on one of those in the next week or two.
Oh,
Because one of the problems with them right now is there's no drivers for it for HamLib. And so that kind of, is a bummer. And I'm gonna go fix that. So if you're thinking about, something like that, then that's my projects here for this month is to go fix the driver issue for the IC 905.
all right. Well, we should probably let you go chase down that Aurora.
Yeah, I'll try. See if I can find a hole in the clouds. If any of you have any questions on any of the rest of this, it's a lot. It's a lot of equipment, and there's a lot of other things that I considered when I went through it. I'm happy to share whatever I know. And if you saw something in there that you know a thing or two about, please tell me. If you've got a hack. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian. Super.
All right, you guys, thanks, and I'll catch you again soon.
All right,
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks,
Super
buddy.
helpful.
No problem. Bye-bye.